About a dozen years ago, Rotary International founded and funded several graduate programs in peace and conflict resolution studies at universities in 5 different countries. Tonight, we're privileged to have a graduate of that program tell us about his experiences. Luke Brothers graduated with a degree in global studies from University of California, Santa Barbara, and stayed on there for a few years working at the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. He was recruited by the Rotary Club of Goleta Noontime for the Peace Fellowship about 10 years ago, and he studied at the University of Bradford in England. Following that, he served as an Afghan analyst at NATO headquarters in Brussels. He currently works for United Health Group in the Bay Area. For grins, he's into bicycling, motorcycles, and old cars. And just prior to beginning his graduate studies in England, he rode his bicycle from Seattle to Washington, D.C., stopping at Rotary headquarters in Evanston, of course, to say hello to the current Rotary International president. He's engaged to be married this spring at the Cal Berkeley football stadium. I think there are a lot of bears in both families in his background. Please give a warm Fair Oaks welcome to Luke Brothers.
All right, good evening, folks. Well, that was a lively auction right there, and so part of my objective here was to tell a story to make sure it's the kind of end of the evening here and make sure everyone's awake and kind of get you focused on the topic here, but I know you're already wide awake after that auction. Yeah. So after the story, I'm going to move into an overview of this Peace Fellowship program. So just, if I can see hands in the air, if you've even heard of the Rotary World Peace Fellowship. Wow, that's excellent. Over the years, so I received it about 10 years ago, and back then I would speak at a club and hardly anyone heard of it. So a big objective for a lot of the fellows is just to get out there and spread the word, because the foundation was spending a lot of money on this and making big investments. We just want to get people to understand the program and then to think about potential applicants. And so that's what item number 3 there is. It's all about actions, what you can do. I'm not here to say, please write a check to the foundation. It's just to think through who you might be able to get in your community to apply for the fellowship. And so I kind of put the bottom line up front here. So if you don't take anything else away, just know these 3 things. Applications for the fellowship are available in December, and they're due in May 2016 for the next batch of students. It is a wonderful program. It is world-class academic opportunity, opens all sorts of doors for fellows. And for me, I'm always expressing my gratitude because it was a wonderful program for me. And so anytime I'm asked to speak to a club, I show up. Rotary flies me around the world to go to the different conventions. I've been to 4, and it's just a gift that keeps on giving. So that's something my parents keep reminding me. They say, Rotary's been so good to you, you need to be really good back to them. I'm not yet a Rotarian, but believe me, I will be. So the story is, takes place on August 15th in Kabul, Afghanistan. I was there, this is a true story. And I've spoken to a lot of clubs, and I've never just started with this part of it. I usually just kind of talk about the Peace Fellowship and then and mention this, because this was a big deal for me. And I put it here because I thought, well, one club I spoke to in England once, it was an all-men's club, really old-fashioned. We had lunch, and about 90% of them all went to sleep right after lunch. And so I thought, I need a way to kind of energize the room so they listen to what's happening. So I thought, well, why don't I tell the story right off the bat? And then I thought, well, with Paris just happening on Friday, I thought this was in the front of my mind as well. So right after the Peace Fellowship, I went to NATO headquarters in Belgium. The Peace Fellowship got my foot in the door there. I'll tell you all about that. And I was working in the press office for the spokesman. And they had an Afghan desk, 16 people just doing press on the war in Afghanistan. And I was one guy in that office, the youngest, the only American, and I was the guy that came in first thing in the morning and read all the press on Afghanistan. There were guys that came in before me, and they literally cut out articles from the newspapers. this is kind of before this is 2008, so I mean, technology changed a little bit since then. They would cut out articles, and then they would have them sitting on my desk, and we would have translations of all the Afghan media, Pakistani media, everything was translated, it was on my desk. I read through it all. The spokesman came in and I said, "Boss, I have 5 minutes with you, this is what happened overnight, this is what the journalists can be calling about," and he was already a smart guy, he knew most of it, I was just there as backup. So the elections in Afghanistan, the last presidential elections, were August 20th, 2009. And around, I don't know, May, June, before, the spokesman in Afghanistan had a medical emergency, had to pull him out. And so they said, "Luke, you're young and expendable. We're going to start sending people in for 30-day rotations during this period when the spokesman is out of commission." And they said, "We want you to go in August 10th to September 11th, 2009. It'd be during the period of the elections." And my whole objective coming out of school since 9/11 was to work in Afghanistan. I found my way into NATO headquarters, I found my way into this press office, and all of my colleagues, all of my peers, their objective when they were in Belgium was eventually to get to Afghanistan. That was just the trajectory for everyone at the time. And I thought, look, this is a perfect opportunity. 30 days, a lot of my friends signed up for a year, 2-year stints. And I thought, 30 days, wonderful opportunity, I'll go for it. So this is the day. This is a little graph just to show you, they told me around April or May of 2009, "Hey, we want you to go." And we, of course, couldn't see into the future to see, these are the number of civilian casualties that took place in Afghanistan up until December 2012. And so the period of time I was there was right here. And of course I didn't know this was going to happen. Everyone kind of suspected presidential election, war was not going well. Talking to my parents on the phone back in California saying, "Hey, I'm going to go to Afghanistan," I think everyone kind of knew what was going to happen. So here's a map of kind of the top half of Afghanistan. You probably can't see it all that well. Kabul International Airport is up here, the kind of main airport road is right here, and this leads into the kind of government zone, which is all down right in here. We're eventually going to focus in right here. For right now, though, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit closer into this area. We're going to switch to satellite view, because it's awesome. So here is the presidential palace. And this is a famous hotel, the Serena. You've probably heard of it in the news here and there. This is the target of attacks and where the CIA is based out of. The Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the National Directorate of Security. This is Afghanistan's combined FBI and CIA. The British Embassy is up here, and Google doesn't list it, but the Canadian, German, Pakistani, Chinese Embassy are all right in here. The American Embassy is there, but it's also this. And then this is ISAF headquarters. This is the military headquarters. ISAF stands for International Security Assistance Force. And this is where I worked for those 30 days. And we're going to zoom in right now to that place. So it's a bunch of buildings. This is the main entrance right here, where cars come and go, and you can walk through here, heavily fortified. I mean, this is where 4-star generals work. This is the hub of the war, at least kind of the political hub. I mean, there's an operational hub at the airport where a lot of the big calls are made in terms of the war. But this is where a lot of meetings are held. This is where I live. There's 10 shipping containers right here. And as accommodations go, these are excellent. I have a picture on the next slide here. So they're all converted shipping containers, and they were fantastic because a lot of people, depending on your pay grade, you had to share a bedroom. Even though you're a lieutenant colonel or something, you're sharing a room with some other guy. We had single unit little places to stay, so it was quite good. So that's where I lived. This is the yellow building, and this is the main headquarters building. So the American 4-star general who runs the war, his office is right there. And my boss, when I was there, who was an Italian diplomat, his office was on the other side of the building. That's the building right here. The humongous vehicles on the right were used by the American General, armored, the whole thing. And the Toyota Land Rover was used by the civilian team that I was on. We had several other vehicles, this just happened to be one. A lot of vehicles there all the time. So, back to the story. Saturday morning, you work 7 days a week when you're out there. Saturday morning I woke up and walked from my container and got a coffee and a donut right here at the cafe, and then walked to my desk, and at 8:30 a.m., car bomb went off right there. And being from California, it felt like an earthquake. The news reports say it was 500 to 1,000 pounds of explosives. And there was hardly anyone in the office at 8:30. A couple of the German security guys who worked in our office, they bolted. They obviously had some post to go defend or something. So there I was with a coffee and a donut, like, what the hell do I do? I'm a civilian. So eventually I found my way over to some kind of bunker where everyone kind of takes shelter. And I started calling Belgium, started calling my boss, waking people up. And a colleague, it turned out, was injured in the blast. And so the spokesperson, she went with him to the hospital. She said, Luke, I'm gone, you need to go out with the military spokesman and go out to the scene. And so I said, okay. And I met up with the Canadian one-star who was the military spokesman, and we had a whole posse of people. We all went walking out there. And the most haunting thing was, as we're walking from the bunker, somewhere back in here, and we kind of rounded this corner, we started to see a bloody footprint running in the opposite direction. So someone had been wounded in the blast and was either being carried or was running back to get help. And so at first, we're walking towards the blast site, we saw a faint footprint, and it got more and more bloody, and it was just a bloody boot footprint. And I just kind of felt like I'm walking in the wrong direction. I'm walking towards this. And so it was, as you can imagine, it was pretty terrible. That was my colleague's car, and I'd been in the country for 5 days, and for those 4 days before this blast, I'd been out in that car with that colleague, going to journalists, going to the radio station. And funny enough, when we got out to this site, I walked past it, and we went to the kind of crater. And then after an hour or two of being out there, I kind of looked around and I saw the car, and I realized, someone told me, hey, he was wounded in the blast. And I didn't put it together until I saw the thing there, and I realized, how real it is. I saw that back seat. I was sitting in that thing. Anyhow, so just behind me in this photo, there was a giant crater. The front half of the car was like 100 feet down the road. The engine, the transmission were all in pieces. All the leaves from the trees had just fallen on the ground, so there's this blanket of leaves, which was kind of nice, because it just hid everything. And to the right over here were a couple cars that had burnt up, and across the street was the Afghan Ministry of Transportation, all the windows blown out. We had to survey the scene, so I just stood there. I'm the civilian, I'm fresh in the country, I really don't belong there, right? So I'm just standing there just listening, right? And I'm reporting some stuff back to Belgium. Everyone's coming up and briefing the military spokesman to say, this is what's going on, this is what we know. Because down here at this site, this is where all the journalists are gathered. They're showing up because this is the main base right next to the American Embassy, bombed 5 days before the presidential election. And so they briefed the military spokesman, we walked down, he briefed the press, and then it was, it was news. So there were 7 or 9 people killed, 90-some wounded. The message was to Afghans, stop cooperating with the international forces. It was to prevent us from getting out and participating in the events leading up to the elections. That's the story. So for whatever reason, I felt compelled to start with that, to kind of go back there. Frankly, when I learned about Paris, that's what I thought of. And ever since then, anytime I read an article or saw something in the news, I go back there. And I think of the dead people laying around, or the guy just dead in his car, or the guy dead next to his bicycle. And it just makes me think differently about everything that we're doing around the world. And I can't believe what people who are there for a lot longer than me see and what they have to endure. Because I was there for 30 days. And that was just one little window of time. And so I just felt like I had to share that with you. So the Rotary Peace Fellowship, this is really what I'm here to speak about. Everywhere throughout Rotary's principles and vision, it's all about advancing world understanding, goodwill, and peace. It's in the mission of Rotary International. It's an object Rotary. It's an avenue of service. So Rotary's vision right here is, let's create a network of people that can do this for us. We want them educated and empowered to go out there and be community leaders and peace builders. So the way Rotary did that is they partnered with 6 universities around the world. This has changed over time. There used to be, Berkeley used to be a university partner. They had a partner in Paris. They had a partner in Argentina. Things have changed. Now they're down to the schools listed up here. And what Rotary does is they fully fund 10 master's degrees at each university every year. So if you think about Duke, right now there's 20 Rotary fellows who are studying there. Tuition, books, housing, travel, research expenses, all paid for by Rotary. And it's not just any old master's degree, it's a specified program in each one of these schools. I went to Bradford, they have a Department of Peace Studies. There's 100 and some students all there studying conflict resolution, negotiation. The little caveat to mention here is there's a program in Thailand it's a professional certificate. So if you can't take a year or 2 years off to do a master's degree, you can go to Thailand and do a short course. The requirements there are a little bit different. I can give you all the information if you're interested. The component that makes us different from any old scholarship is the AFE, the Applied Field Experience. So what this is Rotary says, great, I'm going to send you to school and you're going to learn all about peace and conflict, but then you have to go do something in the middle over your summer break. Design some program, go team up with someone and go out into the field and apply yourself. During my AFE, I wrote to NATO and I said, I'd love to come be with you guys for 3 or 4 months. And at the end of that period of time, they told me, we want you to stay, and so I stayed. The AFE is a way to take your curriculum and get practical. It's also a way to get kind of back into the workforce after taking some time off and going to school. This is a component that really makes the Peace Fellowship different and attractive to a lot of people. This is really what makes it so superior. The Paul Harris Annual Seminar, every year at each one of the universities, all the Peace Fellows who are there present all of their research to a community of all the Rotarians in the area. So it's a chance for the students to get a little experience organizing this event. It's a chance to present what they're researching. It's also a chance to kind of to help build this network. And the last piece is the Rotary family. That's the best way I can put it. It's just to say that when you're an applicant, you're going to a lot of Rotary clubs. You're meeting with a lot of the Rotarians in your area. You're going to a lot of district conferences. Then when you're an actual Peace Fellow, I felt like a piece of meat because Rotary clubs in England are just asking for Peace Fellows all the time. And we were being driven all around England speaking to clubs about the program. So you're getting a lot of exposure to Rotary. And the component of that is going back to the idea of creating this network. Because they want this, right now there's 900 Peace Fellows out there that they built up. And they're trying to keep them, they don't want them just individuals out there in the world. They want them to be able to coordinate and make a phone call. Say, hey, I know someone out there in Paris who can help or who can make something happen. And so Rotary is helping facilitate that network. This is a photo in Sao Paulo just a few months ago. I'm over here in the red sash. They have me working as a sergeant at arms. Rotary brings together a lot of the Peace Fellows about every 3 years at the international conventions to do a peace symposium. So it's a pre-convention event. Rotarians, I think, are invited to go as an additional expense, of course. But Rotary brings in a large number of Peace Fellows to network. There's panels, there's discussions. We all talk about what we're doing. And this year, what was unique was something really concrete came out of this. There were a lot of bigwigs from Rotary International were there, and they're kind of saying, hey, we need to start seeing some return on this investment. And so an idea came up at this event that for any international project, let's say you want to do something in West Africa, your district raised a lot of money. If you reached a certain dollar threshold, Rotary International would get a Peace Fellow involved who had some specialty in that region to advise and assist to make your project more effective. So it's an idea of tapping into this knowledge base of Peace Fellows that Rotary has built up over the years. So these are the Rotary Peace Symposiums. I've been lucky enough to go to all of them. And I think the next one's in Atlanta, Georgia in 2017, if the convention is there in 2017, if I'm correct. The last thing, this is new. So Rotary received a permanent endowment, I think from one Rotarian who said, every other year we need to convene a small group of Peace Fellows to focus on a particular issue that's affecting the Peace Fellows right now. And they had the first one of these leadership retreats in April 2014. There were 9 Peace Fellows there. I was lucky enough to be involved. It was in Winston-Salem. And the topic was how to avoid burnout and to promote adjustment and resilience in alumni. And so having gone through that event in Afghanistan, the rest of the time there wasn't particularly pleasant. I came back to California, switched jobs, and eventually now I'm a project manager for Optum, a part of United Health Group. Because so often when I see news like that, I go back to that place looking at the crater. And so I am one of the poster children of burnout and in need of some resilience. And so I think Rotary is starting to realize, we're looking for a return on our investment, but we're losing some fellows. And so that was the topic that we tackled, and it's something that came up in Thailand, because I was sitting there having breakfast with the life of the party, this one Peace Fellow who lights up the room. I've known him for several years. And I was having breakfast and we were talking about everything except work. And then he did a lot of work in Afghanistan. I said, hey, when are you going back? And he just deflated. And I said, how do you handle, all of your stress? And he said, ask me today. He was on a panel. He said, ask me tonight at the panel. So I got up in line and I asked a question about, trauma and fatigue. And the room just lit up in conversation. The whole panel wanted to talk about it. And I think, we know it's such an issue with, members of the armed service, but I think there's civilians who are going through the same thing out there. And they're just as fatigued as anyone else being involved in these wars for the last 15 years. So, I was going to go through some of my profiles to describe how I got here, but I think my bio did a good job of that. So the action piece. I just want to emphasize the idea of finding someone in your district or in your community who you think would be a good fit for this program. There's a lot of other potential here. I stole this slide from a Rotary International deck. My emphasis to you is just think of where you can go in your community to find some people to put forward for this program, because it's excellent. Here's a kind of timeline for applications. They'll be available online December. You have several months to complete it in May. So I highlight the restrictions here. So this means you cannot apply. So active and honorary Rotarians are not eligible for the fellowship. And employees, spouses, and former Rotarians. So it has to be someone outside of your family. My dad got these wrong when I was first applying for it. He thought he had to be a member, so he's like, oh, I'm going to scramble and go be a member. I'm like, no, Dad, no, you can't be a member. These are the requirements to be eligible. You have to have a commitment to conflict resolution. You have to have some leadership skills. You have to have some work experience. We don't want people who are just fresh out of college just moving straight onto a master's degree. You have to have the academic background, and a second language. It used to be required that you have a second language. That they've dropped that, so it's just now preferred. And so I heard there's bonus points if you stop by 8:25, and so I have my eye on the clock. I'm happy to take questions. There's 2 links here for resources if you'd like to learn more. If you just Google Rotary Peace Fellow, you'll find a lot of information. And of course, you can contact me, and I'd be happy to talk. So thank you very much for your time.
We absolutely